And now we're at the part of the shelf where almost everything you see is something that I would be willing to read. Don Quixote, which is the Tobias Smollett translation. I have not read it. I really want to, and possibly reading it on the channel would be the best way to do it. My grandmother's copy of Gulliver's Travels, another book I would love to read on the channel. Moby Dick, which I'm happy to say that I have read all the way through. This is, again, illustrated by the guy that did that copy of The King that I showed you in the last video. Annotated Alice. I grew up with a wonderful paperback of the Annotated Alice. Basically what that means is that this is just, I believe, Marvin Gardner explaining everything about Alice in Wonderland, and I pored over that book when I was a kid. And next to it I have an Arthur Rackham illustrated Alice in Wonderland. Let's open it up here. Again, I apologize for quality, but I'm just holding a cell phone. There she is, swimming with the birds. And we'll look at one more picture. Oops. His Cheshire Cat. Yeah, American McGee, eat your heart out. These are much creepier than your designs for your video game. Pig and Pepper. I would love to read you guys Alice in Wonderland. But if you can find Christopher Plummer reading Alice in Wonderland, find it and listen to that, because I will never do as good of a job as him. All right, back to the shelf it goes. Dracula. I have an arrangement right now with, I believe it's Dr. Reed's or Multiverse of Geekdom. I can't remember the name of his channel. He wants to read Dracula on his channel, and I want to promote his reading of Dracula. But if he doesn't do it soon, some Halloween, I will hit upon that. Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Again, I know you guys are worn, and this is my grandmother's copy of the book as well. It's rainbow edition, so not worth a great deal of money or anything, but I would love to read that to you. I have always had a rule, and you've seen it in videos, against saying the N-word in videos, but since it's an important cultural part of that, argue with me how you like on that. If I did read that book, I would read it as written and not edit it. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, with a really cool illustrations by the Dillons. This is definitely on the list to be read, and probably sooner rather than later. Yeah, I'm excited for when I get to this book. And anybody who wants to try to get me to bump it up the chain would not be too hard. Just say, man, we want to hear 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And it's not that exciting of a book, but I really do want to do it and do The Mysterious Island, the other Captain Nemo book, after I'm done with it. And one that I've already read you, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. There's some short stories in there. I don't have a copy of Treasure Island yet, but I would like to read that to you. Picture of Dorian Gray, which I would be totally willing to read. Peter Pan, totally willing to read. Jungle Book Volume 1, The Mowgli Stories, which I have already read you. The Annotated Wizard of Oz, not nearly as fun as the Annotated Alice. And my copy of Wizard of Oz from when I was a kid. Sorry for the quality here, which is all Folly Party. I know that I have a relative who is getting rid of some books that has a not falling apart edition of this. This is what I grew up with. This is how I envisioned all of these characters. I love the MGM Wizard of Oz, but in my head, this is what the Lion, the Tin Man, the Scarecrow, and Dorothy look like. And I read this aloud to some grade schoolers back when I was in the before and after school business, before and after school care business. So I would happily read it again on the channel. Stick that up there. A very old copy of The Land of Oz, which I would also happily read. I do all the Oz books if you wanted me to do all the Baum Oz books. And here And we're going to be talking now and very soon about an author who's kind of fallen from popularity, The Bear's Famous Invasion of Sicily by Dino Buzzati, that came back because of Lemony Snicket. This was a very out-of-print book. I believe this one has a introduction by Lemony Snicket in it. Huh, maybe it doesn't. No, it doesn't, but this would be one where I'd have to show you the pictures as I read it, because they are quite cool. Inflatable boars. But yeah, I would happily read that to you, as well as The Wind in the Willows, The Call of the Wild, Mary Poppins, which I read to you at Christmas, Mary Poppins Opens the Door, which I will try to squeeze in this upcoming Christmas, Mrs. Pigglewiggle, which I would happily read to you. Love Mrs. Pigglewiggle. That's one I would be pleased to do the whole series of for you. Homer Price. I've already read several things from it. Both Winnie the Pooh books, definitely on the list. The White Deer by James Thurber. Yep. Book of Merlin. It would take a minute to get there because I'd want to read you all the other T.H. White stuff, which I know I said I was not that excited to want to read a while ago, but my mind could be changed. The Bridge at San Luis Rey, which I have not read yet, so I don't know enough about it to know if I'd want to read that out loud. The Rutabaga Stories. I would love to read you those. And then this is some stuff that is a little bit too contemporary for me to want to read to you. Chronicles of Harris Burdick, which is a great book. Chris Van Allsburg. I'll show you the illustrations real fast. And this is just all different authors writing stories about the pictures in this book. And there's Stephen King and Sherman Alexie, who is probably not going to be writing any books anytime soon, sadly. It was sad to hear about Sherman Alexie. I think this is the one he wrote. Let's see. A Strange Day in July. Yep, Sherman Alexie. All right, back to the shelf with that. This is a cool book. That's not really... It's short stories, but again, it's too contemporary. Sean Tan's Tales from Outer Suburbia. So I will definitely put it out as a recommendation for you to find and read, but it's just too new of a book for me to want to do a read aloud of. Raven Girl by Audrey Niffenegger. I still haven't read this, and much shame to me because I love Audrey Niffenegger. I've probably had this book for close to 2 years. David Thompson's Have You Seen? This is kind of my personal film guide where I pick what movies to watch. And let's see. The Wolves of Willoughby Chase, which I have already read you, and we'll be reading more by Joan Aiken. Lloyd Alexander's The Book of Three. Definitely in consideration. I'd have to do the whole Pride and Chronicles, and I'm sure you've heard how I butcher the Welsh language, which is... So the Pride and Chronicles, if you don't know, are the Welsh version of the Legend of King Arthur, who in this series of books is called... when my dad read it to me, he pronounced it Gwendian. It really worked for me as a kid. It doesn't work for me that much as an adult, but just out of nostalgia, I've held on to these, so happily would read you some of these. Thief of Always, I've already read you. Figure in the Shadows, coming soon. Trolley Yesterday, I've already read you. Oh, and these I should be showing you the covers for. You saw this when I made the video. Awesome Edward Gorey cover. I paid a little bit of money to get these, but God, beautiful books. I originally had, like a paperback of this, and when I found it, it was money to get this. How much did they want for it when I bought this like 10 years ago? It was like $35 $35, it looks like. And Lord knows I've paid more for books, but these are beloved. Just these gorgeous Edward Gorey wraparound covers. Drum the Doll and the Zombie. This is when Brad Strickland took over writing the books, but Edward Gorey was still doing the covers. God, gorgeous, gorgeous stuff. Love Edward Gorey. I also love Edward Artizone, who, these are, Nurse Matilda is Nanny McPhee, for all intents and purposes, the Nanny McPhee movies. Now, I haven't read these. I was given them because I love Edward Artizone. And this is definitely, again, something that was possible to likely that I would read on the channel. Danny the Champion of the World, of course, very likely I'd read on the channel. Charlotte Sometimes by Penelope Farmer. I haven't read it, but I've heard nothing but good things. Totally possible I'd read it on the channel. Jules Pfeiffer's The Man in the Ceiling. This is a book that's dependent upon the illustrations. As much as I love it, I don't know that I would ever get to do it. Maybe when, I mean, Pfeiffer is a very old man now, and if he passes away and I feel super nostalgic, I might pull that out and read it to you as a read aloud. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang by Ian Fleming, with another one of my favorite illustrators. There's the Dark Angel that I just read you. John Birmingham did the pictures for this, which is why I bought this book. Again, at Spine and Crown, which I've mentioned a couple of times in this series. I'd love to read you that if you want to hear it. The Whipping Boy by Sid Fleischman. I think this is a first edition. I got this probably 30 years ago or more for Christmas. I know it's a first edition. Let's see. My book plate. That's got another one of my favorite illustrators working on it, Peter Siss. Yep, first edition. 86, 32 years ago. Yikes. Randall Jarrell's The Gingerbread Rabbit, with another one of my favorite illustrators, Garth Williams. Look at that. God, I love that cover. This rabbit with a pipe in his mouth, the gingerbread rabbit, and the hungry, hungry fox. This is one of the first books I read to my nephew when he was just an infant, so he could get used to the sound of my voice. Would I love to read it to you? I would. Let me know. An annotated Phantom Tollbooth, which I replaced my paperback copy of Phantom Tollbooth with. This is, of course, illustrated by Jules Pfeiffer, who did Man in the Ceiling that I was just talking about. Another Edward Gorey one, Adventures of Gremlin. This is just kind of silly, not really a great read-aloud book, but it's Edward Gorey, so of course I picked it up when I found it. All of his stuff is being, or a lot of his stuff is being published by Pomegranate, which is a stationery company, which is kind of weird. I mean, I have some postcards by them. And let's pause there, and I'll come back to this.